The first time I noticed him, he was standing by the mailboxes, fiddling with a package too large for the slot. Mid-30s, clean-shaven, that unassuming friendly neighbor looked that people underestimate. His name was Drew, I later found out. At the time, he just gave a polite nod as I passed him on the way to the elevator, arms full of groceries. I didn't think much of it. We crossed paths a lot after that: parking lot, lobby, laundry room. Always casual. Always cordial. Just another guy who lived 2 floors below. But here's the thing no one tells you. Affairs rarely start with a kiss. They begin with convenience. Proximity. A favor here, a favor there. A certain rhythm that grows unnoticed, like mold behind wallpaper. And by the time you notice the smell, it's already too late. I was often away: conferences, trainings, long hours locked behind glowing screens and fake smiles. She stayed home mostly. My wife, Emily. We'd been married 8 years by then, the kind of marriage that no longer needed constant tending. Or so I thought. We shared quiet dinners, watched reruns of crime shows, and sometimes made love like old friends rediscovering something they once knew well. It wasn't thrilling, but it was ours. Then one evening, I came home early, flight canceled out of Denver, and found 2 cups on the kitchen counter. Mugs. Still warm. She looked startled when I walked in, but not guilty. Just unsettled. Drew stopped by, she said, wiping her hands on a dish towel. The pipe under the sink was leaking again. Right. That pipe. The one I'd been meaning to fix. He helped her fix it. That was believable. She wasn't the type to lie easily. Her tells were microscopic, like the twitch in her eyelid when she held something back. But that night, she blinked a little too long when I asked if she needed help cleaning up. A few days later, she mentioned him again. Offhandedly. Drew says the building's changing management, she said over breakfast. You know he's a property lawyer? Helped Mrs. Reynolds with her lease dispute. And just like that, Drew went from stranger to helpful neighbor to part of our orbit. He'd hold the elevator if she was coming down with the stroller. Offer to carry up groceries if her hands were full. Sometimes I'd pass him on my way out, and he'd give that familiar nod, always polite, always relaxed. He had a dog, a basset hound named Lucy, and Emily loved dogs. We didn't have one: too much travel, too little space. But I'd catch her kneeling to pet Lucy in the courtyard, smiling in a way I hadn't seen in a while. Still, I told myself it was innocent. You don't think to suspect the neighbor, not until you have a reason to. Not until something shifts. It started small. Coffee. That's what she told me later. Just a quick cup while Jason napped. Drew was home too, working remotely. They'd talk in the hallway, and one day he invited her in. Nothing wrong with that. She didn't even hide it. He's nice, she'd said. Reminds me of your brother, actually. That comparison stuck with me because my brother is the kind of guy who'd flirt with a waitress while his wife waited in the car. Charming. Always harmless until he's not. When I asked her what they talked about, she said books. Politics. His ex-girlfriend and how she took the damn dog in the breakup. And she laughed when she told me that. Not the forced kind. The belly-deep one. I hadn't heard that laugh in months. There's a unique kind of intimacy in shared silence, and I started to notice her silence changing. Not heavy or resentful, just content. She didn't complain as much when I traveled. Didn't press me to reschedule dinners. She kissed me goodnight, but her lips barely touched mine. Like she was checking off a box. Still, nothing definitive. Nothing I could call betrayal. Yet, one morning, I left my laptop at home and came back to grab it. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. Jason was at daycare, but I heard voices from the stairwell. Not loud. Intimate. I paused at the door, not sure why. Then I heard her laugh. That same deep, full laugh. And Drew saying something low, followed by a pause, then a soft gasp. Hers. I didn't go out. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. Finally, I heard the door to the stairwell open and shut. When she came back in, cheeks flushed, shirt slightly untucked, she looked surprised to see me. Forgot something, she said, a little too breathless. I smiled and nodded, grabbing my laptop. Yeah, just a minute. I didn't say a word, because that was the moment I knew. It wasn't physical yet, not all the way, but it was close. And she didn't consider it cheating. Not yet. But I did. It became a ritual. Tuesdays and Thursdays mostly. Drew would walk his dog around 10 a.m., stop outside our door, and Emily, like clockwork, would open it before he even knocked. Sometimes I'd come home to find a second mug in the sink. Sometimes there was no trace at all, just her humming while folding laundry, a soft grin curling her lips. I tried to convince myself it was innocent, that maybe she needed someone to talk to, someone less distracted than I'd become. But truthfully, I knew. I knew before it ever became physical. You feel it in the way they start brushing their hair more carefully in the morning, the way they light up at someone else's name, the way their silence grows a pulse of its own. I started leaving later for work, lingering by the mirror, pretending to fix my tie so I could catch them in the hall. Once I pretended to forget my wallet, just so I could loop back around. They were standing too close. She was laughing again, tucked into the wall of the stairwell, her hand gripping the railing, his hand too casual, resting against the door behind her. I called her name, and she jolted like someone waking from a dream. Drew turned slowly, gave me that easy smile. "Hey man, we were just talking about the HOA fees." I nodded, said nothing, and went back inside. She followed a minute later, voice light. "Drew says they're increasing again. Can you believe that?" I looked at her, really looked. The way her eyes avoided mine, the faintest tremor in her fingers as she set down her keys. That was the moment I realized it had already happened. Maybe once, maybe more. And she was still pretending it hadn't. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay beside her, listening to her breathing, her occasional soft sighs as if she were dreaming of someplace quieter, easier. I wanted to reach out, to pull her back into our bed, our marriage, our reality. But I didn't. I stared at the ceiling, counting cracks, wondering if I'd missed the moment she slipped through them. The next morning she kissed my cheek as I left. Her lips were warm, familiar, and yet I felt nothing. No spark, no guilt, no fire. Just a quiet resignation, like I was shaking hands with a stranger at the end of a very long party. I started watching them. Not obsessively, not yet, but enough to track the patterns. She wore perfume again on Thursdays. Not the heavy kind she used on date nights. A lighter one, floral and barely there. She started buying new bras, delicate ones she never wore for me. The kind with little bows in the center, soft lace tracing the edges like a secret. I checked her browser history. Nothing explicit. But there were searches. Signs of emotional affairs. Can you love two people? One search stood out. Is coffee with someone else cheating? That one hit me harder than any kiss might have. Because she wasn't asking if sex was cheating. She was asking if what she felt now, the part where her heart tilted slightly toward him, the part where she shared her thoughts and her mornings and her laughter, that part. She wasn't sure if it counted. I almost wanted to scream at the screen, yes, IT counts. But I didn't. Because that was the cruelest part of it all. She didn't see what she was doing as betrayal. Not yet. It was still safe in her mind, still innocent because there were no hotel keys, no tangled sheets. Just coffee. Just stories. Just quiet stairwell conversations that left her flushed and glowing. And me? I was the shadow at the edge of it all, the husband in the background, the man who walked through his own home like a ghost while another man learned the color of my wife's laughter better than I remembered it. One night, I sat on the stairs outside our building, just past midnight. I'd come home late and couldn't bring myself to go inside. The light above the entry flickered. The hallway smelled like fresh paint. I sat there smoking a cigarette I'd bummed from a guy outside a bar, thinking about how it all starts. It doesn't start with a kiss. It starts with a question. A harmless one. Would you like some coffee? She said yes. And that's all it took. There's a certain sound a stairwell makes when someone's trying not to be heard. It's not silence, not really. It's the absence of footsteps where footsteps should be. The breath held too long. The rustle of clothes brushing brick. I started noticing that sound around the second week of November. I'd come home early from work, a canceled client meeting, and as I stepped into the lobby, I caught that sound drifting down from above. I paused, listening. Two voices. One hushed, one breathless. Hers. Then a muffled laugh. Then silence. I took the stairs instead of the elevator that day. Each step was slow, deliberate, soft soles against concrete. I stopped just one floor below ours and waited, staring at the chipped paint on the wall. When I finally heard the stairwell door open, I didn't look up right away. I waited until their footsteps hit the hall carpet. She said something low, amused. He replied with a chuckle, then added, "We shouldn't." The door to our apartment clicked shut. My blood felt like ice in my veins. We shouldn't. 3 words that tell you everything you need to know. That night I said nothing. She curled up on the couch in her oversized sweater, sipping tea, pretending she'd just been running errands. I wanted to ask where she'd really been, how long she'd lingered in that stairwell with him, what parts of herself she offered up piece by piece. But I didn't ask, because I wasn't ready to hear her lie. Not yet. Instead, I began collecting the pieces. Small things, nothing dramatic. A receipt from the coffee shop 2 blocks over, timestamped for when she told me she was at the gym. An unfamiliar hoodie left draped over our kitchen chair one morning, too big to be hers, definitely not mine. A picture of her phone screen reflected in the microwave door, just for a second, his name displayed as a notification, Drew. Missed your voice. I took note of them all. Quietly. Meticulously. I didn't confront her. I observed. I studied her like a stranger. The way she smiled when she thought no one was watching. The way she paused in front of the mirror, longer than usual. The way her fingers grazed her own collarbone when she was thinking about something far away. I saw her less and less, even though we technically lived together. She went to bed earlier. Locked the bathroom door more often. I stopped being part of her day and became part of the scenery. The man who loaded the dishwasher. The man who paid the rent. One evening, she came home and I was already sitting in the stairwell. Lights dimmed. Hood up. I watched her through the railing. She didn't see me. But he did. Drew stepped into the hallway seconds after her. Too close, too familiar. They paused. He touched her arm. Her hand didn't move away. It lingered. I held my breath. She turned toward him, and for a moment, I thought she might kiss him right there. But she didn't. She whispered something, he smiled, and she disappeared inside. Door closed. That was it. Nothing physical. Not that time. But everything else was already done. I sat there another 15 minutes, heart pounding, fist clenched. When I finally got up, I didn't go inside. I walked the block twice. Bought a black coffee I didn't want. Let the cold seep into my bones like penance. When I got back, she was asleep on the couch, one arm slung over her eyes like the weight of her secrets was too much to bear even in sleep. I watched her from the doorway, trying to remember what her face looked like before it became a mask. Before the coffee. Before the stairwell. Before Drew. She stirred, sensing me maybe, then settled deeper into the cushions. And I realized she wasn't ever going to tell me. Not unless I made her. But I didn't want a confession. I wanted the truth without the performance. And to get that, I'd have to wait. I'd have to dig. I'd have to play the long game. Because now I wasn't just the husband. I was the ghost in the stairwell. The quiet witness. And I was done pretending not to see. It happened 3 days after Thanksgiving. I remember because the leftovers were still in the fridge, untouched. She'd made this cranberry apple tart she found on some food blog, said it was for us, but I knew she made it for herself. For him. He liked cranberries, she'd said once, absent-mindedly, while scrolling through her phone, and I had nodded like it meant nothing. But I remembered. I always remembered. That afternoon she left wearing the green sweater she always said was too dressy for errands. Tight black jeans. Makeup, not heavy, just enough to blur the fatigue that had settled under her eyes lately. I asked her where she was going. She said Trader Joe's. Didn't even blink. I waited 5 minutes after the door closed. Then I followed. I didn't have a plan. Just a direction. Instinct led me to the back exit of the building, the one that led out into the side alley by the stairwell. I moved quietly, tucked into shadow, the bitter cold stinging my cheeks. I didn't have to wait long. They met at the bottom of the stairs. Not inside. Not hidden. Outside, in the open, like shame had lost its grip. She smiled when she saw him, a slow, unguarded smile that belonged to someone else, someone I used to know. He touched her back gently as she stepped closer. I couldn't hear them, but I didn't need to. Her hands cupped his face. She leaned in. And this time, she did kiss him. Not a peck. Not nervous. It was long. Familiar. I felt something inside me buckle. Not rage. Not even betrayal. Just the dull, echoing sound of a door closing in my chest. The confirmation of something that had already died. They stayed like that for a few seconds more. Then she pulled away, laughing quietly. He said something that made her tilt her head and touch his arm again. They turned and walked off down the sidewalk together, her shoulder brushing his, their hands almost touching. Almost. I didn't follow. I walked back inside, up the stairs they'd just left. Same bricks. Same rail. Same echo under my boots. But it all felt foreign now, like I was stepping through the ruins of someone else's life. Inside the apartment, the tart sat in the fridge. I opened it, took one bite. Too sweet. Too bitter. I tossed it in the trash. That night, I didn't ask her where she'd been. She said something about a long line at the store. I just nodded and turned the page of my book. I wasn't reading. I was studying her. Her posture. The way she avoided my eyes. The way she left her phone screen face down on the table. Everything okay? She asked after a long silence. Of course, I said. I think that was the moment she started to suspect. Because she smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. That smile was for me, and I didn't want it anymore. I wanted the one she gave him. I started documenting everything. I bought a cheap burner phone, took photos. Timestamps. I logged her calls, when she left, when she returned. She wasn't clever with it. She still used our shared calendar. Marked dentist appointments that didn't exist. Blocked off 2-hour chunks labeled yoga, with no mat, no change of clothes, no soreness after. She underestimated me. Most people do. Especially when you're quiet. When you don't fight back. When you make your anger so still it looks like indifference. But still waters run deep. And mine was turning dark. I started looking at Drew differently. Not as the man who stole my wife, but as a man who let himself be taken in by someone who was already breaking. He thought he had won something. I almost pitied him. Almost. Then one evening, I passed him on the stairs. Just us. No Lucy. No groceries. No distractions. He nodded, like always. And for the first time, I nodded back. We locked eyes for a second too long. His expression changed. Just slightly. Like he knew. Like I knew. That was the moment it became war. He just didn't know what kind of war he'd stepped into. Because when you betray someone who remembers everything, who sees patterns in chaos, who knows the rhythm of your movements before you make them, you don't walk away clean. You walk into a trap. And that trap had already started to close. She started keeping the windows open. Said she liked the breeze. Even when it was cold. Even when the apartment filled with the chill that clung to your bones and made the radiators hiss louder in protest. But it wasn't about the air. It was about the scent. She was trying to cover something. Her own guilt, maybe. His cologne. Hers. That strange, warm, musky perfume she never wore before. The kind that lingers in fabric and skin and memory. I sat on the couch one evening while she moved around the kitchen. She hummed. She always hummed after seeing him, like the wires in her had been plugged into some secret source of light. What's that song? I asked. She blinked, thrown. What song? The one you're humming. She paused, then smiled, distant. Oh, just something from a playlist Drew gave me. There it was again. So casual. Like saying someone's name enough times makes it harmless. Like normalizing the man you're fucking makes him less of a threat. That night I stood in the hallway outside the stairwell for almost an hour. Just stood there, invisible, letting the heater click and pop behind me, listening to the old building breathe. It's funny how long someone can stand in silence without being noticed. That's what I was now. A shadow. A stillness. Waiting. The next day, I followed him. Drew, in his neatly pressed coat and smug little gait, heading downtown with a briefcase that probably had more chargers than papers. He was easy to tail. Distracted. He stopped for coffee, flirted with the barista. Said something that made her laugh. Same smile he gave Emily. I snapped a photo. No reason. Just instinct. Just another stitch in the pattern. He worked out of a co-op building with glass walls. I watched from across the street, drinking burnt gas station coffee while he sat inside typing away. He was a man with routines. Predictable. That made things easier. That made him vulnerable. That evening I asked Emily what Drew did again. Legal stuff, she said, pouring herself a glass of wine. Tenant law? Property disputes. What? No reason, I said. He just seems like a guy who could talk himself out of trouble. She didn't answer. Didn't even look at me. Just sipped her wine, red staining her lips, and turned back to her phone. A text pinged. She tilted the screen just slightly away from view. I stood and walked into the bedroom without a word. The next time she went to him, I followed her again. She wore the gray coat that hugged her waist, the one she always said made her feel put together. She didn't see me half a block back. She didn't look around. When she reached the back entrance of his building, he was already there, holding the door open like they'd planned it. Like clockwork. They didn't even kiss. They just went inside. That kind of familiarity, the practiced silence of an affair that no longer needs permission, it told me everything. I waited 30 minutes. Then I walked into the building. Acted like I belonged. Drew's name wasn't on the call box, but I didn't need it. I knew which floor. I'd watched him too many times. I found his door. Apartment 3C. I stood in front of it and listened. I heard voices. Laughter. A quiet thump. And then, like some sick punchline, the same song she had been humming played through his Bluetooth speaker, muffled through the wall. I took out my phone and recorded it. No confrontation. Not yet. That wasn't the point. This wasn't about stopping it anymore. This was about seeing how deep the rabbit hole went, about documenting every step, every lie. People think pain comes with noise, with shouting, with tears. But no, real pain is silent. It's in the restraint. It's in walking away from that door without knocking. It's in waiting, watching, planning. Because she thought she was writing a story without consequence. But she forgot I was in it too. And I had begun drafting my own ending. One where I wasn't the fool. One where she learned what it felt like to look someone in the eyes and not recognize the man standing there. One where the stairwell wasn't the only place things fell apart. It was just the beginning. I started sleeping in the guest room. Didn't announce it. Didn't offer reasons. Just moved my pillow one night and closed the door behind me. She didn't ask why. That was the part that stayed with me. She didn't even pause. Like the shift was overdue. Like she'd already made space for the absence. The space between us grew so gradually, so cleanly, that it almost felt designed. A ghost of her perfume lingered on our shared sheets for 2 nights, and then it was gone, replaced by cold fabric and the weight of my own stillness. I still cooked dinner, still filled the gas tank, still paid the electric bill. The machinery of marriage kept humming, even as the heart of it had long since stopped. We spoke in half sentences. Did you see the mail? Yeah, it's on the counter. Jason needs a ride Tuesday. I'll take care of it. But we never spoke of the stairwell, never of Drew. That silence was sacred in its own sick way, like a wound neither of us dared to press. One night I caught her crying in the bathroom. She didn't know I was listening, standing just outside the door. The sound was quiet, choked. Not the sobs of guilt, though. The sobs of a woman unraveling under the weight of a lie too long carried. I thought maybe this was it, that maybe she'd walk out of that bathroom and tell me everything. Maybe she'd confess, apologize, try. But when she emerged 10 minutes later, her eyes were clear, her smile soft. I couldn't sleep, she said, slipping past me. Made some tea. I didn't answer. I watched her go back to the bedroom, wrap herself in a lie like a second skin. I went back to the guest room and didn't sleep at all. The next day, I left work early and visited Drew's office building again. I'd already done the digital digging. His firm was small, a boutique tenant rights outfit with a mediocre online presence and a Yelp review from a woman who claimed he'd ghosted her after 3 dates. I found that oddly poetic. I brought a flash drive with me this time, loaded it with screenshots, the receipts, the recording from his hallway. My plan was simple: make a copy of everything, drop it into a manila envelope, and mail it to his firm. Anonymous. A warning shot. But as I sat in my car, staring at the building, a better idea crept in. Slower, colder, a longer play. I didn't want to scare him off. I wanted him comfortable. I wanted them both to believe I still didn't know. Because the fall is always worse when it comes after a sense of safety. I started smiling more at home, laughing at her jokes, offering to pick up dinner. She blinked the first few times, confused, uncertain. But slowly, she relaxed. Her guard lowered. She let me in again on the surface. And all the while, I was building a file. Every text I intercepted through our shared cloud account. Every time she said she was at yoga but her GPS tagged her 2 blocks from Drew's apartment. Every call she made at 1:12 a.m., thinking I was asleep. I had it all. I became something new in those weeks. Not husband. Not victim. Not fool. I became the architect of my own revenge. Not the explosive kind. No yelling. No drama. Just something precise. I planned it like a heist. One morning I watched her in the kitchen, hair tied back, humming again. She was texting him. I knew that look, the faint curl of her lip, the slight pause of her fingers before she hit send. She turned to ask me something about the water bill and I smiled, told her I'd already paid it. Thanks, she said, her tone soft, surprised. I nodded, sipping my coffee. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. I'd passed that point. Now I was patient, focused, in control. She thought I was drifting back to her, that the worst had passed. She didn't know I was already gone. She didn't know the stairwell was the least of her sins. She didn't know I'd found something in her emails. A reservation. A weekend trip. Not to see her mother like she claimed, but a cozy Airbnb on the coast. 2 guests. 1 king bed. Her and Drew. Booked for next Saturday. Perfect. She thought she was escaping. She thought I'd never find out. But what she didn't know was that I'd already been there. I'd already spoken to the host. I'd already changed the locks. I told her I had a work conference. A 3-day retreat. Out of state. Friday to Sunday. She nodded, distracted, her eyes darting toward her phone mid-conversation. She barely asked for details. Didn't even pretend to be disappointed. I kissed her on the cheek before I left, suitcase packed with nothing but a few decoys, a toothbrush, 2 shirts, and a book I hadn't read in years. Then I drove 2 blocks, parked behind an abandoned warehouse, and waited. The Airbnb she booked with Drew was a 2-story beachside cabin, tucked in one of those quaint little towns with antique shops and overpriced seafood. I'd driven up a day earlier and checked into a motel 10 minutes out. The host, Naomi, had been more than helpful. Said she'd never met my wife in person, all communication had been online. I introduced myself as Emily's husband, calmly explained that she'd booked it for our anniversary, and I wanted to surprise her. I smiled, told her I wanted to make it special. What I didn't say, I already knew everything. That they'd planned this trip down to the wine pairings and dinner reservations. That she'd told Drew she needed this weekend to finally figure things out. That she'd packed the white dress she hadn't worn in years because he always loved her in it. I arrived 2 hours before they were due. Naomi gave me the keys without question, wished me luck with the surprise. I walked through the house slowly, taking in every corner. It had a fireplace, a deck facing the ocean, a bedroom with high windows and crisp white sheets. I took my time making it mine. Rearranged the furniture just slightly, left the fireplace dark, removed the wine glasses from the kitchen counter. And most importantly, I set up the camera. It wasn't dramatic. Just a little black lens nestled into the bookshelf, facing the couch. Motion activated. Synced to my phone. I wasn't interested in filming them together. That wasn't the point. I wanted faces. Words. Proof. I wanted to see the moment when her guard dropped. When the weight of the lie became too heavy. When comfort slipped into confession. People are always honest when they believe they're alone. By the time they arrived, I was already gone. Parked down the road in a borrowed delivery van, tucked behind a line of dunes. My phone buzzed once. Motion detected. I watched her step into the frame, Drew behind her, both laughing, hands full of grocery bags and wine. She kissed him. Not the stairwell kiss. This one was slower. Intentional. Claimed. They didn't unpack right away. They sat on the couch. She kicked off her shoes. He opened a bottle of wine. And just like that, they began performing their version of a weekend getaway. Pretending the world outside didn't exist. Pretending I didn't exist. She rested her head on his shoulder. Said something I couldn't hear. He smiled, kissed the top of her head. My phone recorded every second. I didn't flinch. It was the next morning when it happened, when everything cracked. They were arguing. It started small. Something about the reservation she forgot to confirm. Then it escalated. My phone buzzed again, audio this time. Voices rising. Her tone sharp. You said this would be simple, Drew. His response was clipped. I didn't think your husband would take the week off work, Emily. I saw him yesterday. She froze. What? In the stairwell. I think he saw me leave. He didn't say anything, but he knows. A pause. Her voice, lower now. No, he doesn't. He would have said something. You sure about that? He snapped. And there it was. The first crack. The first thread coming loose. She stood up. Paced. Ran her hands through her hair. It's just guilt, she muttered. He'll get over it. We were already broken. Drew didn't reply at first. Just stared at her. Then he said the one thing I didn't expect. You're not leaving him, are you? She froze again. Turned slowly. What? You keep saying you will, he said, but I don't think you're going to. That's not fair, isn't it? He said. Look at this. Hiding. Lying. If we were real, why wouldn't you just end it? I couldn't help it. I smiled. Because he was unraveling now. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was betrayal with expectations. And expectations are poison in affairs. They always want more. More time. More honesty. More space that isn't borrowed from someone else's life. She sat down, hands in her lap. Didn't answer him. I recorded all of it. I didn't send it to her. Not yet. I wanted her to come home. I wanted to see the look on her face when she walked back through our front door, into a home where everything had changed. I wanted her to speak to me, to lie, to carry on the show. I wanted her to look me in the eyes and feel that tiny flicker of doubt that maybe I wasn't blind after all. And when she finally did, when she stepped through the doorway Sunday night, suitcase in hand, cheeks flushed from the ocean air, I was sitting on the couch with the TV off. Hey, she said, trying to sound tired. How was your trip? I looked up, held her gaze. Refreshing, I said. Yours? She paused, just for a moment, then smiled. Peaceful. And just like that, the final act began. She unpacked slowly, carefully, folding each item like the act itself made her blameless. The white dress went back on its hanger. The beach sand still clung to the hem, and I watched her pause and shake it loose like she could dust the evidence away. I asked if she needed help with anything, and she smiled. That soft plastic expression she wore when pretending to be the version of herself she thought I remembered. "No, I've got it," she said, disappearing into the bedroom. I stayed in the living room with my phone in my lap, thumb resting on the file, one click away from playing back everything I'd seen, everything she thought she'd hidden. I didn't open it. Not yet. I was waiting for her to lie one more time, to cross that final line with a calm voice and a practiced face. Dinner was quiet. I made her favorite, lemon chicken, garlic mashed potatoes, roasted asparagus, each piece of the meal deliberate. She complimented it, said I looked well-rested. I said it was the ocean air. "They really had you by the coast?" she asked. I nodded, slicing into the chicken. "Right on the cliffs." She paused. I saw her trying to decide if I was being literal or poetic. Her phone buzzed once on the counter. She glanced at it and didn't move. That's when I knew. She hadn't told him it was over. Hadn't ended it. She was still caught between versions of herself, still dangling from the cliff with one hand in my life and the other in his. I leaned back in my chair. "You ever think about selling this place?" I asked. She blinked. "What?" "The apartment. Starting fresh. Somewhere new." Her fork hovered over her plate. "Are you serious?" "Why not?" I shrugged. "New city. New neighborhood. New neighbors." She looked away, down at her food, and I could feel the silence grow teeth. That night, she stood in the bathroom brushing her teeth, and I watched her through the reflection. She met my eyes once in the mirror and held the stare a beat too long. I could almost hear her thoughts scraping against the inside of her skull. Did he know? Had I seen something? Had I followed? But I didn't give her anything to work with. I brushed my own teeth in silence and walked out first, leaving the door open behind me. The next morning, I sent the video to her email. No subject line. No message. Just the file. I watched her from the kitchen as she opened it on her phone. The blood drained from her face so fast I thought she might faint. Her hand clutched the edge of the counter. Her breath stuttered, and for a long time, she didn't look up. She watched it to the end, listened to every word. Her shoulders slumped like the structure she'd built inside herself had finally collapsed. "You knew," she said without looking at me. "The whole time. Since the stairwell," I said. "Since the first laugh you gave him that used to belong to me." She turned slowly. "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because I wanted you to," I said. "I wanted to see how long you could lie to my face before you drowned in it." She opened her mouth, then closed it again. No apology. No tears. Not yet. Just silence. "Are you going to leave me?" she asked. I stared at her a long time. I already did. And then I walked out. Out of the apartment. Out of the weight of her. Down the same stairwell where she'd given herself away piece by piece. The hallway lights flickered overhead as I passed the spot where it began. The hand on the railing. The half-second too close. The laugh. The descent. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. By the time I reached the bottom, I felt it. Not peace. Not relief. But something sharper. Clarity. The kind that comes after months of being slowly poisoned. I stepped out into the morning light, phone buzzing in my pocket, her name lighting up the screen. I didn't answer. I just kept walking, past the corner store, past the parked cars, past the echo of the life we pretended to share. The war was over. Not because I forgave her. Not because I wanted closure. But because I had already won. I let her build the lie. Let her feed it. Let her water it with excuses and morning coffee and secret stairwell meetings. And then I let it collapse, all on its own. No yelling. No scenes. Just a quiet demolition. She'll live in the rubble. I won't.